ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaste, my dear friends. I am going to give you a very wonderful video. In this video, Maharishi Ramnath's disciple A. Devraj Mudaliar has collected various spiritual subjects of Maharishi Ramana. ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaste, my dear friends. This is video number 2 on the gems from Sri Ramana Maharishi. This video starts with gem number 7, Grace and Guru. I have not said that a Guru is not necessary, but a Guru need not always be in human form. First, a person thinks that he is inferior and that there is a superior, all-knowing, all-powerful God who controls his own and the world's destiny and worships him or does bhakti. When he reaches a certain stage and becomes fit for enlightenment, the same God whom he was worshipping comes as a Guru and leads him onward. That Guru comes only to tell him that God is within yourself. Dive within and realize God, Guru and the Self are the same. Realization is the result of the Master's Guru's grace. More than teachings, lectures, meditations, etc., they are only secondary aids, whereas the former is the primary and essential cause. Guru's grace is always there. You imagine it to be something somewhere high up in the sky, far away, and which has to descend. It is really inside you, in your heart, and the moment by any of the methods you effect subsidence or merger of the mind into its source, the grace rushes forth, spouting us from a spring from within you. Contact with Gyanis is good. They will work through silence. A Guru is not the physical form, hence his contact remains even after the physical form of the Guru vanishes. After your bhakti to God has matured you, God comes in the shape of a Guru and from outside pushes your mind inside. While being inside as self, he draws you there from within. Such a Guru is needed generally, though not for very rare and advanced souls. One can go to another guru after one's guru passes away. But after all, gurus are one, as none of them are the form. Mental contract is always the best. Satsang means association with Sat or reality. One who knows or has realized Sat is also regarded as Sat. Such association is absolutely necessary for all. Sankara has said in all the three worlds there is no boat like satsang to carry one safely across the ocean of births and deaths. Guru not being physical, his contact will continue after his form vanishes. If one Jnani exists in the world, his influence will be felt by or benefit all people in the world, and not simply his immediate disciples. As described in Vedanta Chudamani, all the people in the world can be put under four categories: the Guru's disciples, Bhaktas, those who are indifferent to him, and those who are hostile to him. All these will be benefited by the existence of the Jnani, each in his own way and to various degrees. From the book Divine Grace Through Total Self-Surrender by D.C. Desai, Bhagwan read out the following quotations by Paul Brunton for our benefit. Divine grace is a manifestation of the cosmic free will in operation. It can alter the course of events in a mysterious manner through its own unknown laws, which are superior to all natural laws and can modify the latter by interaction. It is the most powerful force in the universe. It descends and acts only when it is invoked by total self-surrender. It acts from within because God resides in the heart of all beings. Its whisper can be heard only in a mind purified by self-surrender and prayer. Rationalists laugh at it and atheists scorn it, but it exists. It is a descent of God into the soul's zone of awareness. It is a visitation of force unexpected and unpredictable. Predictable. It is a voice spoken out of cosmic silence. It is cosmic will which can perform authentic miracles under its own laws. In truth, God and the Guru are not different. Just as the prey which has fallen into the jaws of a tiger has no escape, so those who have come within the ambit of the Guru's gracious look will be saved by the Guru and will not get lost. Yet each one should by his own effort pursue the path shown by Guru and gain release. Each seeker after God should be allowed to go his own way. The way for which he alone may be built means it will not do to convert him to another path by violence. The Guru will go with the disciple in his own path and then gradually turn him onto the supreme path at the ripe moment. Suppose a car is going at Top speed to stop it at once or to turn it at once would be attended with disastrous consequences. Gem number 8. Self realization. The state we call realization is simply being oneself, not knowing anything or becoming anything. If one has realized he is that which alone is and which alone has always been, he cannot describe that state, he can only be that. Of course, we loosely talk of self realization for want of a better term. That which is peace. All that we need do is to keep quiet. Peace is our real nature. We spoil it. What is required is that we cease to spoil it. For instance, there is space in a hall room. We are not going to create space anew. We fill up the place with various articles. If we want space, all that we need to do is to remove all those articles and we get space. Similarly, if we remove all the rubbish from the mind, the peace will become manifest. That which is obstructing the peace must be removed. Peace is the only reality. Mukti or liberation is our nature. It is another name for us. Our wanting mukti is a very funny thing. It is like a man who is in the shade, voluntarily leaving the shade, going into the sun, feeling the severity of the heat, making great efforts to get back into the shade, and then rejoicing it. At last I have reached the shade. How sweet is the shade! We are doing exactly the same. We are not different from the reality. We imagine we are different. That is, we create the Bheda Bhava, the feeling of difference, and then undergo great sadhanas to get rid of the Bheda Bhava and realize the oneness. Why imagine or create the Bheda Bhava and then destroy it? It is false to speak of realization. What is there to realize? The real is as it is ever. How to realize it? All that is required is this: we have realized the unreal. That is regarded as real what is unreal. We have to give up this attitude. That's all that is required for us to attain jnana. We are not creating anything new or achieving something which we did not have before. The illustration given in the books is this: we dig a well and create a huge pit. The akasa, space in the pit or well, has not been created by us. We have just removed the earth which was filling the akasa there. The akasa was there then and is also there now. Similarly, we have simply to throw out all the age-long sanskaras, innate tendencies which are inside us. When all of them have been given up, the self will shine alone. Effortless and choiceless awareness is our real state. If we can attain it or be in it, it is all right. But one cannot reach it without effort, the effort of deliberate meditation. All the age-long vasanas, latent tendencies carry the mind outwards and turn it to external objects. All such thoughts have to be given up and the mind turn inward. For most people, effort is necessary. Of course, every book says, Summa Iru, be quiet or still, but it is not easy. That is why all this effort is necessary. Even if you find one who has effortlessly achieved the Mona silence or supreme state indicated by, you may take it that the effort necessary has already been completed in a previous life. Such effortless and choiceless awareness is reached only after deliberate meditation. The books no doubt speak of Sarvana, hearing, Manana, reflection, Nididhyasana, one-pointed concentration, Samadhi, and Saksatkaram, realization. We are always the Sakshat, real, and what is there for one to attain Karam after that. We call this world Sakshat or Pratyaksha, directly present. What is changing, what appears and disappears, what is not Sakshat, we regard as Sakshat. We are always and nothing can be more directly present than we, and about that we say we have to attain Saksatkaram. After all these sadhanas, nothing can be more strange than this. The self is not attained by doing anything other than remaining still and being as we are. We say that what we see with the eyes alone is pratyaksha. There must first be the seer before anything could be seen. You are yourself the eye that sees. Andha Milakan, the infinite I, referred to in the Ulladu Narpadu reality in 40 verses. People are afraid that when the ego or the mind is killed, the result may be a mere blank and not happiness. What really happens is that the thinker, the object of thought, and thinking all merges into the one source, which is consciousness and bliss itself, and thus that state is neither inert nor blank. I do not understand why people should be afraid of that state in which all thoughts cease to exist and the mind is killed. Every day they experience that state in sleep. There is no mind or thought in sleep. Yet when one rises from sleep, one says, I slept happily. Sleep is so dear to everyone that no one prince or beggar can do without it. When we have vikalpas, false concepts, and are trying to give them up, that is when we are still not perfected, but have to make conscious effort to keep the mind one pointed or free from thought. It is nirvikalpa samadhi. When through practice we are always in that state, not going into samadhi and coming out again, that is the sahaja natural state. In sahaja one always sees oneself. He sees the Jagat world as Savrupa, reality or Brahmakara, form of Brahma. Eventually, what was once the means becomes itself the goal. Whatever method one follows, dhyana, meditation, jnana, bhakti, and samadhi, are all names for ourselves, for our real state. Knowing one's self is only being one's self, as there is no second existence. This is self realization. You may go on reading any number of books on Vedanta, they can only tell you realize the self. The self cannot be found in books. You have to find it from yourself in yourself. The Lord whose home is the interior of the heart lotus and who shines there as I is extolled as the Lord of the cave. If by force of practice the feeling I am He, I am the Lord of the cave, Guhesha becomes firmly established, as firmly as your present notion that you are the ego is established in the body, and thus you stand forth as the Lord of the cave. The illusion that you are the perishable body will vanish like darkness before the rising sun. The true karma, yoga, bhakti, or jnana consist in finding out who it is that does the karma or seeks reunion through yoga or feels separation from his Lord or is in ignorance. All these do not exist without the I. So to remain as the I is the truth. If we regard ourselves as the doers of the action, we shall also be the enjoyers of the fruits of such action. If by inquiring who does these actions one realizes one's self, the sense that one is the doer vanishes, and with it all the three kinds of karma, which sanchita, agamya, and prarabdha. This is the state of eternal mukti or liberation. Our real nature is mukti, but we imagine that we are bound and are making strenuous attempts to become free while we are all the time free. This will be understood only when we reach that state. We will be surprised that we were frantically trying to attain something which we have always been and are. An illustration will make this clear. A man goes to sleep in this hall. He dreams he has gone on a world tour, is roaming over hill and dale, forest and country, desert and sea, across various continents, and after many years of weary and strenuous travel, returns to this country, reaches Tiruvannamalai, enters the ashram, and walks into the hall. Just at that moment he wakes up and finds he has not moved an inch but was sleeping where he lay down. He has not returned to the hall after great efforts but is and always has been in the hall. It is exactly like that. If it is asked why being free we imagine we are bound, I answer, why being in the hall did you imagine you were on a world adventure, crossing hill and dale, desert and sea? It is all mind or maya. The dyads or the pairs of opposites such as pleasure and pain, and the triads or such differences as the knower, the known, and the process of knowing depend on one thing, the ego. When one seeks for that thing in the heart and finds out its real nature, they will vanish. Those alone who have found out the real nature of the ego have seen the reality. They will have no more doubts or anxieties. There is no knowledge apart from ignorance and no ignorance apart from knowledge. That alone is jnana or real knowledge, which when inquiring to whom this knowledge or ignorance arises, reaches that source which is the self. The thought I am the body is ignorance. That body is not apart from the self is knowledge. The body is a mental projection. The mind is the ego, and the ego rises from the self. The body thought is distracting and strays away from the self. For whom is the body or birth? Not for the self, the spirit. It is for the non-self which imagine itself separate from the self. So long as there is the sense of separation, there will be afflicting thoughts. If the original source is regained and the sense of separation ends, there is peace. A, a stone picked up from its place and thrown up into the sky has no rest till it comes back to earth. The waters of the sea evaporating and rising into the sky as clouds find no rest till they come back as rain and finally rush back to the sea. The ego can have peace only when it merges back into its source, the self. Seeing God in any form and speaking to Him is as real as your own reality. In other words, when you identify yourself with the body, in the waking state you see gross objects, when in the subtle body, the mental plane as in dream, you see objects equally subtle in the absence of all identification, as in dreamless sleep you see nothing. The objects seen bear a relation to the state of the seer. The same applies to visions of gods. By long practice, the figure of God as meditated upon appears in dream and may later appear even in the waking state. There was a saint by the name Namdev. He could see, talk and play with Vithoba, the god of Pandharpur. God had to teach him that was not enough and one must press on further and realize the self where seer and seen are one. Vision of Shiva. Vision is always of an object that implies the existence of a subject. The value of the vision is the same as that of the seer. The nature of the vision is on the same plane as that of the seer. Appearance implies disappearance as well. Whatever appears must also disappear. A vision can never be eternal, but Shiva is eternal. Visvarupa Darshan, vision of the cosmic form, and Visvatma Darshan, vision of the universal self, are the same. Such darshan is not by eyesight or in any gross fashion. As there is only being, without a second, anything seen cannot be real. That is the truth. The moral behind the story of Ashtavakra and Janaka is simply this: the disciple surrenders himself to the master. That means there is no vestige of individuality retained by the disciple. If the surrender is complete, all sense of individuality is lost and there is no cause for misery. The eternal self is only happiness and that is revealed. The whole of Vedanta is contained in the two biblical statements I am that I am, and be still and know that I am God. There is a state beyond our efforts or effortlessness. Until that is realized, effort is necessary. After tasting such bliss, even once one will repeatedly try to regain it. Having once experienced the bliss of peace, no one would like to be out of it or engage himself otherwise. It is as difficult for a jnani to engage in thoughts, as it is for an ajnani to be free from thought. Any kind of activity does not affect a jnani. He remains ever in eternal peace. Ishta Devta, deity of one's choice, and Guru are aids, very powerful aids on this path. But for an aid to be effective requires your effort also. Your effort is a sine qua non. It is you who should see the sun. Can spectacles and the sun see for you? You yourself have to see your true nature. Not much aid is required for doing it. First one sees the self as object, then one sees the self as void, and then one sees the self as the self. Only in this last case is there no seeing, because seeing is becoming. The more we control thought, activity, and food, the more we will be able to control sleep. But moderation ought to be the rule for the sadhak aspirant, as explained in the Gita. As explained in the Gita, sleep is the first obstacle for all sadhakas. The second obstacle is said to be vikshepa, or the sense objects of the world which divert one's attention. The third is said to be kashya, or thoughts about previous experiences with sense objects. The fourth, ananda, bliss, is also called an obstacle because in that state a feeling of separation from the source of Ananda, making the enjoyer say, I am enjoying Ananda, is present. Even this has to be surmounted, and the final stage of Samadhana or Samadhi has to be reached, where one becomes Ananda, or one with the reality and the divinity of enjoyer, and enjoyment ceases in the ocean of Satchit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, or the self. The power of a Jnani's self-realization is more powerful than all occult powers. To the Jnani, there are no others. But what is the highest benefit that can be conferred on others, as we call them? It is happiness. Happiness is born of peace. Peace can reign only when there is no disturbance by thought. When the mind has been annihilated, there will be perfect peace. As there is no mind, the jnani cannot be aware of other. But the mere fact of his self-realization is itself enough to make all other peaceful and happy. The following extract from a letter of the poet Tennyson to BP, blood was read out in Bhagwan's presence, a kind of waking trance I have frequently had quite up from the boyhood when I have been all alone. This has generally come upon me through repeating my own name 2 or 3 times to myself, silently till all at once, as it were out of the intensity of consciousness of individuality. The individuality itself seemed to dissolve and fade away into boundless being, and this not a confused state, but the clearest of the clearest, the surest of the surest, the weirdest of the weirdest, utterly beyond words, where death was an almost laughable impossibility, the loss of personality, if so it were, seeming no extinction but only true life. Bhagwan said that state is called abidance in the self. Gem number 9. Heart. In the center of the cavity of the heart, the soul of Brahma shines by itself as the Atma, self, in the feeling of I. Reach the heart by diving within yourself, either with control of breath or with thought concentrated on the quest of the self. You will thus get fixed in the self. I have been saying all along that the heart center is on the right side, learned even when learned men differed from me. I speak from experience. I knew it even in my home during my trances, samadhi. Again, during the incident recorded in self realization, I had a very clear vision and experience. All of a sudden, a light came from one side, erasing the world vision. I felt that the heart on the left had stopped and the body became blue and inert. Vasudeva Shastri embraced the body and wept over my death. But I could not speak. All the time I was feeling that the heart center on the right was working as well as ever. This state lasted 15 or 20 minutes. Then suddenly something shot out from the right to the left like a rocket bursting into the sky. The blood resumed circulation and the normal condition of the body was restored. The entire universe is condensed in the body and the entire body in the heart. Thus, the heart is the nucleus of the whole universe. This world is not other than the mind. The mind is not other than the heart. That is the whole truth. The source is a point without any dimensions. It expands as the cosmos on the one hand and as infinite bliss on the other. That point is the pivot form. It a single Vasana starts and expands as the experiencer. I, the experience and the experienced the world. To Rama, who questioned Vasishtha, which is that big mirror in which all these are mere reflections. What is the heart of all souls or creatures in this universe? Vasishtha replied, all creatures in this universe have two kinds of hearts. one to be taken note of and the other ignored. Here their respective traits. The one to be ignored is the physical organ called the heart, which is situated in the chest as a part of the perishable body. The one to be taken note of it is the heart, which is of the nature of consciousness. It is both inside and outside us and has neither an inside nor an outside. This is the really important heart. It is the mirror which holds all reflections. It is the basis and source of all objects and all kinds of wealth. Therefore, it is only that consciousness which is the heart of all, not that organ, a small part of the body which is insentient like a stone and perishable. So one can achieve the eradication of all desires and control of breath by the practice of merging the mind in the heart, which is pure consciousness. Concentrating one's thoughts solely on the self will lead to happiness or bliss. Drawing in the thoughts, restraining them, and preventing them from going out, what is called vairagya. Fixing them in the self is sadhana or abhyasa, practice. Concentrating on the heart is the same as concentrating on the self. The heart is another name for the self. The self is the heart. The heart is self-luminous. Light arises from the heart and reaches the brain, which is the seat of the mind. The world is seen with the mind, that is by the reflected light of the self. It is perceived with the aid of the mind. When the mind is illumined, it is aware of the world. When it is not itself so illumined, it is not aware of the world. If the mind is turned inward towards the source of light, objective knowledge ceases and the self alone shines forth as the heart. The moon shines by the reflected light of the sun. When the sun has set, the moon is useful for revealing objects. When the sun has risen, no one needs the moon, although the pale disk of the moon is still visible in the sky. So it is with the mind and the heart. Jam number 10. Renunciation. When asked how does a grihastha householder fare in the scheme of moksha liberation, Bhagwan said, "Why do you think you are a grihastha? If you go out as a sannyasi ascetic, a similar thought that you are a sannyasi will haunt you. Whether you continue in the household or renounce it and go to the forest, your mind goes with you. The ego is the source of all thought. It creates the body and the world and makes you think you are a grihastha. If you renounce the world, it will only substitute the thought sannyasi for grihastha and the environments of the forest for those of the household. But the mental obstacles will still be there. They even increase in the new surroundings. There is no help in a change of environment. The obstacle is the mind. It must be got over whether at home or in the forest. If you can do it in the forest, why not at home? Therefore, why change your environment? Your efforts can be made even now in whatever environment you are now. The environment will never change according to your desire. If objects have an independent existence, that is, if they exist anywhere apart from you, then it may be possible for you to go away from them, but they do not exist apart from you. They owe their existence to you, your thoughts. So, where can you go to escape them? Where can you go? Fleeing from the world or objects. They are like the shadow of man, which the man cannot flee from. There is a funny story of a man who wanted to bury his shadow. He dug a deep pit and seeing his shadow at the bottom was glad he could bury it so deep. He went on filling the pit, and when he had completely filled it up, he was surprised and disappointed to find the shadow on the top. Even so, the objects or thoughts of them will always with you until you realize the self. Why should your occupation or duties in life interfere with your spiritual effort? For instance, there is a difference between your activities at home and in the office. In your office activities, you are detached, and so long as you do your duty, you do not care what happens or whether it results in gain or loss to the employer. But your duties at home are performed with attachment, and you are all the time anxious as to whether they will bring advantage or disadvantage to you and your family. It is possible to perform all the activities of life with detachment and regard only the self as real. It is wrong to suppose that if one is fixed in the self, one's duties in life will not be performed properly. It is like an actor, he dresses, acts, and even feels the part he is playing, but he knows that he is really not that character but someone else in real life. In the same way, why should the body consciousness or the feeling I am the body disturb you once you know for certain that you are not the body but the self? Nothing that the body does should shake you from abidance in the self. Such abidance will never interfere with the proper and effective discharge of whatever duties the body has, any more than the actor's being aware of his real status in life interferes with his acting a part of the on the stage. Renunciation is always in the mind, not in going to the forest or solitary places or giving up one's duties. The main thing is to see that the mind does not turn outward but inward. It does not really rest with a man whether he goes to this place or that, or whether he gives up his duties or not. All that happens according to destiny. All the activities that the body is to go through are determined when it first comes into existence. It does not rest with you to accept or reject them. The only freedom you have is to turn your mind inward and renounce activities there. Nobody can say why that freedom alone and no other freedom is left to man. That is the divine scheme. Giving up activities means giving up attachment to activities or the fruits thereof. Giving up the notion I am the doer. The activities which this body is destined to perform will have to be gone through. There is no question of giving up such activities, whether one likes it or not. If one remains fixed in the self, the activities will still go on and their success will not be affected. One should not have the idea that one is the doer. The activities will still go on. That force, by whatever name you call it, which brought the body into existence, will see to it that the activities which this body is meant to go through are brought about. If the passions are something external to us, we can take arms and ammunition and conquer them. They all come from within us. If by looking into the source whence they come, we prevent their coming up and we shall conquer them. It is the world and the objects in it that arouse our passions. But the world and these objects are only created by our mind. They do not exist during our deep sleep. The fact is that any amount of action can be performed and performed quite well by the Jnani without his identifying himself with it in any way or ever imagining that he is the doer. Some power acts through his body and uses his body to get the work done. Gem number 11. Fate and free will. Free will and destiny are ever existent. Destiny is the result of past action. It concerns the body. Let the body act as many should it. Why are you concerned about it? Why do you pay attention to it? Free will and destiny last as long as the body lasts. But jnana transcends both. The self is beyond knowledge and ignorance. Whatever happens, happens as the result of one's past actions, of divine will, and of other factors. There are only two ways to conquer destiny or the independent of it. One is to inquire for whom is this destiny and discover that only the ego is bound by destiny and not the self, and that the ego is non-existent. Therefore, the other the other way is to kill the ego by completely surrendering to the Lord, by realizing one's helplessness and saying all the time, not I, but thou, O Lord, and give up all sense of I and mine, and leaving it to the Lord to do what He likes with you. Complete effacement of the ego is necessary to conquer destiny. Whether you achieve this effacement through self-inquiry or bhakti marga, path of devotion, everything is predetermined, but a man is always free not to identify himself with the body and not to be affected by the pleasures or pains consequent on the body's activities. Those alone who have no knowledge of the source whence fate and free will arises will dispute which of them can conquer the other. Those who have realized their self, which is the source of both fate and free will, have left such disputes behind and will have nothing more to do with them. Success and failures are due to prarabdha karma and not to willpower or the lack of it. One should try to gain equipoise of mind under all circumstances, that is willpower. Gem number 12. Jnani. A Jnani has attained liberation even while alive here and now. It is immaterial to him as to how, where, and when he leaves the body. Some Jnanis may appear to suffer, others may be in samadhi, still others may disappear from sight before death. But that makes no difference to their jnana. Such suffering is only apparent, seeming real to the onlooker, but not felt by the jnani, for he has already transcended the mistaken identity of the self with the body. The jnani does not think he is the body. He does not even see the body. He sees only the self in the body. If the body is not there but only the self, the question of its disappearing in any form does not arise. It is mentioned that the greatest malady we have is the body, the bhava disease of birth, and if one takes medicine to strengthen and prolong its life, it is like a man taking medicine to perpetuate his disease. A Sanskrit verse in Canto 11 of the Bhagavata says, the body is not real, impermanent, whether it is at rest or moves about, and whether by reason of prarabdha it clings to him or falls off from him. The self-realized Siddha is not aware of it, even as the drunken man blinded by intoxication is unaware of whether his cloth is on his body or not. Illustrations are given in the books as to how a jnani who is in the sahaja state and who always sees only the self can move about and live in the world like everyone else. For instance, you see a reflection in the mirror. You know the mirror to be the reality and the picture in it a mere reflection. In order to see the mirror, is it necessary that one should cease to see the reflection in it? Or again, take the screen illustration. There is a screen. On that screen first appears the figure of a king. He sits on a throne. Then before him in that same screen a play begins with various figures and objects, and the king on the screen watches the play on the same screen. The seer and the seen are mere shadows on the screen, which is the only reality sporting these pictures. In the world also the seer and the seen together constitute the mind, and the mind is supported by or based on the self. You are under the impression that you are the body, so you think the jnani also has a body. Does the jnani say he has a body? He may look to you as having a body and doing things with the body as others do. The burnt rope still looks like a rope, but it cannot serve as a rope if you try to bind anything with it. As long as one identifies oneself with the body, all this is difficult to understand. Examine all the different kinds of states. Take hold of that state which alone is the supreme and true one and engage yourself in action in the world regarding your life there as mere sport. You have discovered that which is the reality inside your heart behind all the appearances of this world. So, without ever letting that out of your sight, disport yourself as you like in the world, seeming to have enthusiasm and gratification, anxieties and aversions, but really having none of them, seeming to begin and persevere in endeavors, but really having no attachment to such efforts. Engage yourself in the affairs of the world without any detriment to yourself, freeing yourself from all sorts of bonds, maintaining the same equanimity and doing work externally in conformity with the environment in which you find yourself. Dispose yourself as you like in the world. He whose mind is not attached to any desires does no action in reality. Though his body may act, he is like one who hears a story with his mind elsewhere. Similarly, the man whose mind is full of desires is really acting, though his body may be actionless. A man may be sleeping here with his body inert, and yet he may be climbing hills and falling from them in dream at the same time. It is all the same to one who is fast asleep in a cart, whether the cart moves or stops with the bulge left yoked or unyoked. Similarly, for the Jnani who has gone to sleep in the cart of his physical body, it does not matter whether he works or is in deep meditation, samadhi, or is asleep. The statement that the Jnani retains prarabdha while free from sanchita and agamya karmas is only a formal answer to the questions of the ignorant. Of several wives, none escapes widowhood when the husband dies. Even so, when the doer goes, all three karmas vanish. The non-action of the sage is really unceasing activity. His characteristic is eternal and intense activity. His stillness is like the apparent stillness of a very fast rotating top. Its extreme speed cannot be followed by the eye, and so it appears to be still. This must be explained as people generally mistake the stillness of the stage for alertness. Three kinds of karmas are prarabdha, being that portion of one's past karma to be worked out in the present body. Sanchita being the outstanding balance of past karma, and agamaya being the karma that will bear fruit in future births. Gem number 13, miscellaneous. No one can be out of sight of the Supreme Presence, since you identify one body with Bhagwan and another body with yourself. You find two separate entities and speak of going away from here. Wherever you may be, you cannot leave me. Sri Ramakrishna is said to have seen life in the image of Kali that he worshipped. That life was perceived by him, not by all. The vital force was due to himself. It was his own vital force which manifested as if it were outside and drew him in. Were the image really alive, it must have appeared to so to all. On the other hand, everything is full of life. That is the fact. Many devotees have had experiences similar to Sri Ramakrishna. Christ is the ego and the cross the body. When the ego is crucified and it perishes, what survives is the absolute being God. I and my Father are one. This glorious survival is called the resurrection. God the Father represents Isvara. The Son is the Guru and the Holy Ghost is the Atma. The Bible says, "Be still and know that I am God." Psalm 46 found in the Ecclesiastes. There is one alone and here is no second, and the wise man's heart is at the right hand and a fool's heart is at the left. No thought will go in vain. Every thought will produce its effect sometimes or other. Thought force will never go in vain. Some have maintained that the body can be made immortal and they give receipts, medical or other, for perfecting this body and making it defy death. The Siddha school, as it is known in the south, has believed in such a doctrine. Venktasamy Rao in Kumbakonam started a school which believed the same. There is a society in Pondicherry too. There is also the school which believes in transforming man into Superman by descent of divine power. But all the people, after writing long treatises on the indestructibility of their bodies, after giving medical and yogic recipes to perfect the body and keep it alive forever, pass away one day. Name of God and God are not different. The Bible also has it. In the beginning was the world, and the word was with God, and the word was God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the name Rama, Ra stands for the self and Ma for the ego. As one goes on repeating Rama, Rama, the Ma disappears, getting merged in the Ra, and then Ra alone remains. In that state, there is no conscious effort at dhyana, but dhyana is always there, for dhyana is our real nature. The yogi may be definitely aiming at rousing the kundalini, the serpent power, and sending it up the Sushumna yogic nerve. The jnani may not have this as his object, but both achieve the same result, that of sending the life force up the Sushumna and severing the Chit Jada Granthi, the knot binding the sentient and the inert. Kundalini is another name for Atma or Self or Shakti. We talk of it as being inside the body because we conceive ourselves as limited to the body. But it is in reality both inside and outside, being no other than the self or Shakti. In the Jnana Marga, when by self-inquiry the mind is merged in the self and the self, its Shakti or Kundalini, rises automatically. If peace of mind is true mukti or liberation, how can those whose minds are set on siddhis, miraculous powers, which cannot be attained except with the help and activity of the mind, attain mukti, where all turmoil of the mind ceases? Avoid desire and aversion. Do not engage the mind much in the affairs of the world. As far as possible, do not get entangled in the affairs of the others. Giving to others is really giving to oneself. If one knows this truth, would one ever remain without giving? If ego rises, all will rise. If the ego merges, all will merge. The more we are humble, the better it is for us. The best and most potent Diksha initiation is by silence, which was practiced by Lord Dakshinamurti. Those by touch, look, etc. are of a lower order. Mona can change all hearts. Bhagwan, when asked by a devotee whether he should continue taking the name of God as advised by his late Guru or change over to Vichara inquiry, referred the devotee to an article in Vision of September 1937 on the philosophy of the divine name according to Saint Namdev, in which it is explained that God and God's name are all the same. The sun illumines the universe, whereas the sun of Arunachala is so dazzling that in it the universe is not seen, there remains only an unbroken brilliance. It is not true that birth as a man is necessarily the highest, that one must attain self-realization while only being a man. Even an animal can attain self-realization. There is no need there is no need for anyone to start reforming the country or the nation before reforming himself. Each man's first duty is to realize his true nature. If after doing this he feels like reforming the country or nation, by all means let him take up such reform. Swami Ram Tirtha advertised wanted reformers, but reformers who will reform themselves first. No two persons in the world can be alike or can act alike. External differences are bound to persist, however hard we may try to eliminate them. The only solution is for each man to realize his true nature. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says Aham is the first name of God. The first letter in Sanskrit is A and the last letter Ha, and Aha thus includes everything from the beginning to the end. The word I am means that which exists self-shining and self-evident. I am Atma, Aham all refer to the same thing. In the Bible also I am is given as the first name of God. If we concentrate on any thought and go to sleep in that state, immediately on waking up the same thought will continue in our mind. People who are given chloroform are asked to count 1, 2, etc. A man who goes under after saying 6, for instance, will, when he comes round, again start saying 7, 8, etc. When I lay down with limbs outstretched and mentally enacted the death scene and realized that the body would be taken and cremated and yet I would live, some force, call it Atmic power or anything else, rose within me and took possession of me. With that, I was reborn and I became a new man. I became indifferent to everything afterwards, having neither likes nor dislikes. From silence came thought, from the thought the ego, and from ego speech. So if speech is effective, how much more so must be its source. Karpura Arthi, burning camphor before God, is symbolic of burning away the mind by light of illumination. Vibhuti, sacred as is Shiva, absolute being, and Kumkum, vermilion powder, is Shakti, consciousness. The Puranas speak of this hill, Arunachala, as being hollow with cities and streets inside it. I have also seen such things in visions. The books speak of the heart as a cavity, but penetration into it proves it to be an expanse of light. Similarly, the hill is one of light. The caves, etc., are covered up with that light. The means prescribed for securing the spiritual end, such as charity, penance, sacrifice, dharma, virtuous conduct, yoga, bhakti, devotion, and the end itself described variously as heaven, the supreme object, peace, truth, grace, the quiescent state, deathless death, true knowledge, renunciation, moksha, liberation, and bliss are all nothing but being free from obsession that the body is self. Give up regarding yourself as this despicable body and realize your real nature, which is one of eternal bliss. Seeking to know thyself while still anxious about the welfare of the body is like attempting to cross a stream with the aid of a crocodile for a raft. Not desiring the non-self is dispassion, vairagya. Inhering in the self is jnana. Both are the same. So I conclude this video, and all the gems are covered in these two videos. Thank you for watching this video. Namaskar, my dear friend. Thank you.